Why did I move to New York City? Well, if you had asked me a decade ago if I thought I'd be living here, I would have been like, me? What are you talking about? Like, at the end of my college career, my senior year of college, I remember writing a paper about why I would never move to Chicago or a big city. It's too noisy, there's too many people. Like, I just wasn't a city person. Speaking of noises and people, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to record this video, but either someone walks by and is having a very loud conversation, or there's an ambulance, or there's a semi with like that really annoying repeated beeping, or so many helicopters today. And it just cracks me up because literally 9 years ago, I wrote a whole paper on how Chicago is so noisy, and Chicago is tiny compared to New York. Um, and you might be thinking, well, I live in the country and I love all this space and quiet, and I can definitely understand and relate to that to a certain extent. It's almost like why I love my favorite parks at certain points during the day or night because of that quiet that I can get. But at the same time, I wouldn't give up living in New York to go back to the suburbs or to go live in the rural parts of the states. As much as I enjoy visiting those areas, it's not somewhere that I would personally thrive long term. Back in 2021, when I was doing my little digital nomad era, and I still lived in Michigan at the time, the beginning of 2021, I actually lived in Hill Country just outside of Austin, Texas for a month. And I had a wonderful time until that snowstorm hit in February. That was pretty brutal, especially because I was in a wooden cabin with a tin roof. So, not ideal for snowstorms. And thank goodness for my neighbors because my pipes burst and my neighbors allowed me to shower at their home. And by my neighbors, I mean my Airbnb's neighbors. And as much as I loved my stay there, a few months later, I was staying in New York and I was testing it out to make sure that I liked it because if I was going to move from Michigan to New York, that involved me selling my home in Michigan, and that was obviously a big step to do. And so I was in New York, and it was within like that first week that I was like, yep, I'm moving here. Like it's happening. And it took a lot of steps for me to even get there to say, yes, this is happening. I I first decided I wanted to move here back in 2019, like summer of 2019. I was like, okay. I had visited the summer before in summer of 2018, and that summer really helped start to change my opinion on big cities because while I was there, I used to like I was always so self-conscious, but while I was in New York, I'm like there are so many quirky people all over where I don't stand out. Like, I can just go about my life. I can say, do, or be whomever I want to be here. And, like, it's, those cliche songs, but it's so true. I mean, you need to be a certain type of weird to, like, really stand out. And even then, like, you're just par for the course, right? And so it was really nice when I came to visit, and by the following summer I was like, I have all these things that I envision myself doing in life, and I don't know how possible those are while living where I was living. And so end of 2019, or not end of 2019 but like fall 2019, I was like, I need to come up with a plan career wise. I had an okay job, it just wasn't really a career trajectory. And so I did some digging and I was like, okay, Hale, what's your ideal career situation? And I then proceeded to start working on those goals. And by like December of 2019, I had started to build some momentum on those goals, and I had like secured a new job that I was starting literally January 2nd. My last day at my last job was, I think it was December 30th. Yep. And then I had New Year's Eve and New Year's Day off. Then I started at my new job on January 2nd, which was a Thursday. But I was just like so eager to start this next chapter. And I had a plan to eventually move here. Like, I had a plan to come to a conference here in May of 2020 to network in order to secure a job and hopefully move here by like that fall. But then the pandemic happened. So obviously, the conference was canceled and I was devastated. And I spent summer of 2020 and like fall of 2020 testing out all these various goals or ideas that I had had over the years, but I just didn't really have the guts to go after previously. Like, the amount of things that I tried out is kind of just laughable, because I called them side quests. There were just so many different side quests that I went on. Most of them failed, but some of them were successful. Like, to this day, I still technically have a Facebook page that has like over 50,000 followers on it. It was a faceless one, so you wouldn't be able to like find it and recognize that, hey, this is Haley's page. But I haven't done anything with that in years, but it just, I still have it. And I'm grateful that I went through that phase and that life forced me to slow down, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't have had the same opportunities that I did. For instance, because of the pandemic, the job that I had recently started before the pandemic went fully remote. And so that was great, because it was never going to be remote without a major shift like that. And so I was watching all of these people on YouTube that were like digital nomads that were working from anywhere. And I was like, I want to do that. And thankfully, my boss allowed me to. Like, I got permission from her in December of 2020 to go to a couple places the next year, as long as I would still, be around my normal working hours, which obviously. And so January of 2021, I drove down to Texas and I stayed in Hill Country just outside of Austin for a little over a month. I was supposed to stay longer, but I was there during the snowstorm, and the wooden cabin with a tin roof that I had rented was not as strong as the weather, and so the pipes all burst, and thank goodness for the kindness of the Airbnb's neighbors, who allowed me to shower at their home multiple times. I don't know what I would have done without them. But even then, like, as much as I loved my time in Texas, I knew that in a couple months I was trying to go to New York. And I was just really excited to kind of like compare and contrast, because like I lived in the suburbs of Michigan, then I was out in Hill Country, Texas, and now I'm going to New York City. Like, very different atmospheres, like one right after another. And just before I came to New York, I had been working on my career goals. And even though I had that new job, it wasn't the ultimate job that I wanted. And I was set to come to New York in May of 2021. And in April of 2021, I was able to secure a job that I had really wanted to, and I had been working towards at that point for like 18 months. And I became a product manager at a tech company. And again, I only got that opportunity because it was remote. They used to be like full-time in the office, and the only reason that I was hired was because they were now fully remote. Like, all of my coworkers, every person on my team, all lived in New Jersey where their office was, and then I lived in Michigan. So even when I was coming to New York to stay for a couple months, I was actually significantly closer to the office than I would have been had I still been living like full-time in Michigan. And that job is the reason why I was able to say, okay, like, I want to move here, and now I actually can. And so after my 2 months in Michigan, honestly, like after the first week in Michigan, or the first week in New York, I was like, oh yeah, I'm moving here. And so after I got done with my 2 months and I came back to Michigan, I think I signed a lease to move to New York permanently like a month after I came back, because I was just like, I need to go back there. I can't continue living here. I need to go back there. And it's just, I mean, you can literally do whatever you want here. Like, you can just really be you. And I know that there are plenty of people that will watch this and be like, oh yeah, people do whatever they want, and then like, start listing all of the crimes and X, Y, and Z. But let's be real, that happens anywhere. There's just 8 million people in a very confined space. So you're taking naturally there's gonna be some interesting folks in there that, you might not want to interact with. but also there's so many people here that you do want to interact with. I love talking to strangers, and I never run out of strangers to talk to. My family, they also love talking to strangers, so when they come to town, boy, oh boy, do we end up talking to people. Like, it's a good time, and I wouldn't change being that type of person for anything. And so I live here because I outgrew my old environment. And when you outgrow your old environment, you either choose to be unhappy and feel complacent, or you choose to move and find a place that you can grow. And for me, that place is New York. For others, that it can be a completely different situation where you hate the suburbs and you want to like grow in a rural area. Go have at it. Just go test it out. I had a wonderful time. I wouldn't necessarily want to stay there permanently, but I loved my time in Hill Country. I understand why there are so many songs about the Texas sky. I wholeheartedly understand. Because literally my last night, I was there during the snowstorm. I think the snow melted on like Monday and I left Thursday. Wednesday night, I literally fell asleep on the back patio staring up at the sky because I was like, you know what? I'm here. It's like 72 now. It was 10 degrees a week earlier and now it's 72 and I'm sleeping outside. And I had a great time. But also, I love New York. And so I can love both. They're not mutually exclusive. They just bring out different parts of you. And especially career-wise, I wasn't even a realtor at the time, but just career-wise in general, the opportunities here are insane. When I first became a realtor like 2 years ago, I started a meetup group, and it's a meetup.com, and it's like anybody could start a group. I started one, and over the course of a year, I hosted like 10 events, which were really just like, hey, I'm going to go to this museum on this random Sunday. And like, you know, if you want to come meet some strangers and hang out at this museum, come along. That group grew to over 6,000 people in a year. That is insane. But that's also just shows you how much people do want to connect with others. And so if you want to make friends, it's pretty easy here. Like, you are your own worst enemy for them. As you hear, I don't know what's happening. It's like World War III outside. It's fine. I live here because I can be whatever version of me I grow into next. And if there ever comes a time where I don't feel like I can be that version of me, then I'll move again. But for now, this is my home, and this is the vessel that can contain all the different versions of me that I can see in my at least near future. Even in the far future, I do still envision New York being a part-time resident. I'm a part-time resident at that. If you feel like your environment doesn't match your ideal future, change your environment. Maybe try New York on for size. Sure, it doesn't fit all, but you'll know within a week or two if it's right for you. I sure did.